Thank you, Tony, for the introduction, and also thank you to, I'm going to start calling it Short Vista, for sponsoring tonight's meetup. Also, thank you to everyone who was able to make it tonight. I know it's a busy week for many professionals like myself, trying to get everything in before the 4th of July weekend when many of us will have, hopefully all of us, have Monday off. So thank you again for taking the time out of your busy schedules to come here this evening. So I want to start off with a little bit of story. With a little story about Silly Putty. I actually was going to give out Silly Putty tonight, and I ordered 30 different balls of Silly Putty. So I ordered them Amazon Prime. Okay, yeah, 2-day shipping is fine. It'll be here. I ordered it last Wednesday. It should be there. It should have been there over the weekend. So you may have heard there's currently a load of storms hitting the Texas area, and that's supposedly also the Amazon warehouse where the Silly Putty is kept. So my shipment was delayed twice, and it will not be here until this Thursday. So I want to ask a question before we get started. What do you guys think you could do with 30 different balls of Silly Putty sitting in your small house?
Make one very large ball of Silly Putty.
So there's that.
Copy
a whole newspaper.
Can we take it up to a billboard and lift the whole billboard?
Lift the whole billboard. That's hilarious. So we're going to talk tonight about lifting things, but we're going to be lifting things off the web with CasperJS, which is a relatively unknown framework, but we'll discuss why it's such a great framework, and also how to use it. Also, up here you may see this gray banner, this Ask a Question banner. So many times during presentations you want to take notes. You don't want to be going like this for 2-3 minutes or longer. You want to continue to be engaged, but you still want to ask questions or tell me I need to speak louder, or you're talking too much on this topic, shut up. So what we're going to do is, Google recently enabled for slides audience mode. And so what this is you can log into this link and send me a question or comment via the website. Then when I pause and it's a good time for me to answer questions, I will look at these, and I can actually throw, if you have a long question, I can actually throw them up on the screen. So that's a little cool feature, so I don't have to keep repeating the question over and over again. So let's move on. So a little bit about myself to start. My name is Anthony Jesmok. I am currently working as a full-stack developer over at a small marketing agency called Misix. We have 2 locations. Here in Milwaukee is where our development and analytics operations are based, along with most of our accounts. And down in Chicago is our business office and our headquarters, where our CEO, CFO, and other individuals sit. So we serve a lot of clients, primarily in the education, healthcare, and a lot of clients in the automotive industry. So we work a lot with the insurance companies in salvage vehicles. I also am currently getting my master's degree in software engineering from the Harvard University Extension School, which is an online program, although you do have to spend 1 semester on campus. So right now I'm taking computer networks with one of the guys who actually founded the ARPANET protocol, and which became the internet. So this guy is pretty cool. Beforehand in college, I got my bachelor's degree from UW Milwaukee in the School of Information Studies in Information Science and Technology. While I was there, I got my first real development job working at an organization called the App Brewery. What the App Brewery does is they build mobile applications for nonprofits, researchers, and other university partners. And then I also did a year stint with Google working in a position known as a student ambassador. And what that basically is you go to training over the summer, you spend a few days in Mountain View at Google's headquarters, basically working like a Googler and learning about why Google is an awesome company and also opportunities that exist. You then go back to your campus and your communities and you relay and be that Google representative. So I was Milwaukee's Google representative for a year. There is a new representative, however. So how tonight will work. So my discussions and my lectures are very atypical. And what we do is, what I do is I usually present a little bit on theory. I usually do a live coding demo. And then I like to have much of the discussion, or much of the session be interactive discussions. So you all came here for a reason. You're interested in this kind of stuff. And you have questions you probably want answered. I want to make sure that you leave here with your questions answered if I am able to. And if not, I can at least help point you in the right direction. So I'd like to frame this around a discussion. So what we're going to do is we're going to talk a little bit about what web scraping is and the ethics of it as well, because there are some ethical considerations you need when you're developing a web scraper. We're going to talk about PhantomJS and its extension, CasperJS. We're going to program a very basic web scraper together in CasperJS. I'm going to do it live here on the board. And then finally, we'll have time for discussions and questions. So what is web scraping? Well, I think we're going to find out after everyone goes and gets a slice of pizza.
What?
At least here.
Oh, thank you very much. Oh, this is good.
So while the pizza's getting unpacked, I'm going to go ahead and explain what web scraping is. So many websites offer what are called APIs, application programming interfaces, that allow other developers to access their data. But not all of them. Not every website has an API. Not every website has the resources to make an API, or the staffing. So what web scraping is it's essentially we make our own API based off of what we call a headless web browser. Headless web browser, think about it. There's no head. There's no human interaction with it. It's all conducted via a command line and various commands which are sent to a website. We visit pages via the headless web browser, and we can run JavaScript to extract the data that we need. It's like silly putty in comics. You put it down over something you want to capture, you pull it up, and you have a new tangible version of that information that you can later use in something else. Another API, a data analysis set, whatever you want to do, you have that information in a form that's accessible to you. And with the command line headless web browsers, you can automate these tasks. So the ethics of web scraping. Keep in mind, not all websites will allow you to scrape their data. One notable local website that has this restriction is General Mitchell International Airport. They specifically have in their website terms of service that you cannot scrape their data. It's against their terms of usage for the website. So my advice is to make sure you are responsible and respectful of websites and read their terms and conditions to make sure before you scrape their data that you can legally do so. If not, you can get blocked from websites. You can be restricted access to the data. If you're violating terms of service, there's a variety of situations that could happen to you. If you're not sure, ask the website. I always say, especially if it's a private company, if you're trying to scrape a company's private organization's data, they may not want you scraping it. Now, governments, on the other hand, everything is supposed to be free for the most part. You can usually scrape data without cause because it's technically the people's. In the case of private organizations, you want to make sure that you can scrape before you actually do. I also say this, be respectful of server calls as well. Hitting a headless web browser once every second could bring a site down. You could very well accidentally DDoS the site. So be respectful and only call the data when you need to get it. Question?
Are there different levels of robot.txt type script that somebody who really wants to get around it can?
Yes, and what actually happens is, I'll explain a little bit about how CasperJS works, but we'll go ahead and get some pizza here. And then after the pizza's done, I'll go into a little more about what CasperJS is. All right, so we're going to keep going on here, and we're going to go and answer some questions. So Jay asked, are you aware of any court decisions comparing a terms of service denying scraping, yet a developer doing so? For example, has a terms of service language held up in court? So to clarify beforehand, I'm not an attorney. I do not specialize in software law, nor do I know much in this terms of service space. What I do know is that by going to a terms of service page, technically, or by accessing a web page, you technically agree to that terms of service to continue accessing the site. So it's much like in the European Union how cookies, many websites now have to show a cookies disclaimer before they actually allow you to save data in a cookie form. So that is legal. That is illegal now in the EU to store cookies in someone's computer from a website without explicitly giving access. Let's take a look here. Scraping using curl or wget? So Richard asked this question. So I'm assuming the question is about CasperJS and how it scrapes. It does not use any of these. Let's go into how it works. PhantomJS is a framework that is headless. And what it can do is it can navigate to web pages via a command line and scripting. It can save screenshots, it can execute JavaScript, it can do so much more. How it works is not wget, it's not curl. What it actually does is it's just like Google Chrome or many other major web browsers that use the WebKit rendering engine. What this does is it actually renders the page using WebKit, so the same way Chrome will render a page for you. But it's going to the script, and the script is controlling it instead of a user, hence the term headless. So it's using WebKit, it's rendering this page just as if you were visiting it as a normal person. Now, Firefox uses the Gecko rendering framework. There is an alternative for this that CasperJS can also use called SlimerJS. SlimerJS uses Gecko, which is what Firefox uses. PhantomJS was primarily built for automated HTML testing. So, for example, how many of you in here do test-driven development? How many of you want to do test-driven development at some point? There you go. So automated tests can be driven, and many of them are, by PhantomJS. So they can go on these web pages, render them just as a user would see them, and then take results, execute scripts, and return a pass or fail. CasperJS. Think of Casper the Friendly Ghost, that old little cartoon. That's actually probably what he's based off of. That's their mascot down here, the ghost. CasperJS makes navigation scripting with PhantomJS and SlimerJS simpler. So what does that mean? PhantomJS is a really robust framework that allows you to do a lot. The problem is, to do a lot with it, you have to code a lot. You have to code a few lines of code to navigate to a new web page. CasperJS makes this simpler. What's even nicer is they've made new functions that allow you to easily scrape information off web pages. So this is both for testing and for scraping. And it extends the PhantomJS and SlimerJS frameworks. So you can still use any functionality included in both frameworks. But you can also use CasperJS to make the scripts simpler. And you can develop your whatever scrapers you want to develop quicker. Please keep in mind, because many people, once they start seeing me code in the CasperJS, they ask, oh, this is Node, right? This is Node, this is not Node. CasperJS does use the common JS module system, so you can include modules from PhantomJS and SlimerJS as you want, but it is not a Node module. You cannot use this in your Node scripts. Now, that being said, somebody noticed this and created a Node module called SpookyJS, which actually allows you to drive a CasperJS script from Node. So that is a good alternative. So we're going to go ahead and go to the documentation quick start. Actually, not right now, but CasperJS.org is the website for CasperJS. Documentation, their quick start, their GitHub, everything is on there. So CasperJS.org. And so what we're going to do is I'm going to go ahead and jump into a live demo here. And I'm going to scrape the list of Milwaukee JS meetups. So something very relevant to all of us this evening. Please note, this will not be perfect. I'm sure I heard during the pre-social hour over at the Brown Bottle, people were like, oh, you're doing live coding. So just to clarify, I will not be perfect. This will likely include a couple of screw-ups. But feel free to throw in suggestions, questions, feedback along the way. Speaking of questions, are there any before we continue? There are none in the system, but if anyone just wants to shout something out. Okay, we're going to go ahead and move into a live demo. So I'm going to actually turn off the question system. And I'm going to mirror the display. We'll exit that. All right, so we're going to go to meetup.com/MilwaukeeJS. All right, so web silly putty with CasperJS, and then out with the old, in with the new. Let's try scraping this page. So I'm actually going to base my code off of the quick start located online. So what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to look at this code here to learn some of Casper's basics. So like I said, it uses the require.js module system, or should I say the common.js module system. So we can start by including Casper. Var Casper equals Casper start, or actually require Casper.create. I'm going to turn on syntax highlighting. I'm going to move this over to my scrape.js file. There we go. So I got started already. Let me increase the text size. Okay, so text size is up so you guys can see it. So right away at the beginning, I'm declaring and requiring in two modules. So I'm requiring the CasperJS system, which is requiring Casper, and then we're going to go ahead and create a new instance of our headless web browser. On the second line, I'm going to be showing off the Phantom.js and their file system framework. So the file system module for Phantom.js allows you to save information you scrape into a file. This is very useful if you're writing an automated web scraper where you need to store something in, say, a Json file. So let's get started here. So what we do is you can see the information is very, I will zoom in here. The basic navigation example we see on this page uses common keywords. So we're going to start with Casper start. We're going to start at that URL. Then open, and at the bottom, we go ahead and we run our scraper. So we'll do Casper.run, and then we're going to go ahead and do Casper start. We're going to do that. Word wrap will go on. This time, one font size. So Casper start. Casper then. So Casper.then means that we're going to do this. And I'm actually going to go ahead and I'm going to get this page. And I'm going to copy and paste from the documentation this example. This.echo you notice here, this get title function, we can use to get the title of any web page. So I have my command line here. I'm going to do CasperJS straight.js. And you can see it automatically is spitting out the name of our web page. So Milwaukee.js, Milwaukee, Wisconsin.meetup. What I'm going to do next is I'm going to go into the documentation to see what else we can do. Let's see here. So selectors. We can do DOM selectors. We can do XPath selections. There's a variety of other ways. You can see here they actually scrape Google. So, let's get started with, I'm thinking here. Ooh. We're going to get started with a CSS3 selector. So it uses either XPath, DOM, or CSS3 selectors. And what I can do, so I'll do inspect. And I'm going to inspect what this page contains. So, I'm trying to see here what exactly I can find. This looks like here we go. Event item. So we're going to go into here. We're going to do li event item. So what we're going to test for now is we're going to do this.exist li that event item. And it exists. So the event item exists. And then let's see here. I'm just thinking of some other things we can do. We can pull and look at actually some GitHub code I wrote. Just get a reference. So I built a scraper a while back for Milwaukee police calls for service, which is really cool. All right, here we go. So we have this.fetch text. So this.fetch text means we can do li item. And I'm also going to log that to the console. So you see here, it spits out a huge variety of information that we can actually use. So it's scraping the Milwaukee.js page, and it lost a connection to my mouse, and it regained it. And we can see in here, while there's a lot of spaces that are coming out, it is actually pulling our data. So we're going to go back into the meetup page, and we're going to look at item prop is summary. What if I did this? Span item prop equals summary. And you see we now have our titles of our meetups being spit out. So in just a couple of minutes, we are able to develop a scraper that already retrieves for us our meetup titles. This, that gets elements info, will get us this information. So I'm going to do a for loop of items. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to do console of items I.
So you're just running this from the command line on your Mac?
This is what I'm doing. I'm just running the command line on my Mac. So CasperJS is an installed executable that you can just put on into your Mac, and then you can use that.
And then that's invoking fan.js?
Yeah, so that invokes Phantom.js, and it makes the commands, it pushes the commands through. So let's see here. I'm actually going to do console.log, and we're going to do Json. So this will allow us to get a JSON feed. And it did not spit out anything, likely because JSON.parse is not supported. All right. There we go, text. Ta-da! We have our objects. We have now on each line, we now can use those individually via a for loop. What I'm actually going to start doing is I'm going to create an array of JSON objects, and I'm going to call them meetups. And what I'm going to do is, let's see here. I'm going to actually start creating JSON objects that I will push to this array. So this means we'll get an API. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new object. And what I'm going to do is var to push. It's going to be a JSON object. And what we're going to do is we're going to set to push. We're going to do the title. We're going to keep that blank for now. And then to push title. JavaScript. Meetups. And so it is now spitting out each object. So I'm going to do JSON. We'll see if it works in this one, this line. And it did not. That's okay. So we have two push items, dot text.
Could you call it stringify? Is that what you're trying to do?
Thank you, stringify. See, get in front of a bunch of people and it just starts. Thank you for that.
Sure.
And I'm missing. Thank you. All right, let's try this again. All right. What was that? Yes. So what we're going to do is I will do this here. To push or meetups dot push to push. All right. So, oh, I forgot to save my file. There we go. Now it's spitting out. So it's spitting out title, and it's the other title. So we have title and another title. All right, so we're going to do the final part since we only have about 15 minutes left. And we're going to go ahead and do Phantom.js file system. And so the file system module of Phantom.js will let you write files. It is based on the CommonJS file system proposal. So it actually follows the same way that Node, the same way that you can write files with Node FS module, you can do the same thing with Phantom and CasperJS. So we're going to look up just how to write a JSON file. And what we're going to do is it's simply end fs.write meetups at JSON meetups. Let's change that to a W. We'll see if this works. So it does, but it also gets the stringify. And we'll do word wrap. Title. So we now have our two meetups writing to a JSON file. So we have our two titles in a JSON format. This can be used for database processing. This can be used for server-side coding. This can be used for whichever application you would like. So you saw in that about 20 minutes, we were able to write a very basic CasperJS script that takes a list of the Milwaukee JS meetups and pushes them out. Could we go further with this? We could definitely go further with this. We could do the times. We could do the dates. We could do all of the things that Meetup has on their website. We could scrape that information for ourselves. So I'm going to ask at this point if anybody has any questions or other things they'd like to find out about. Jay?
Do you know if there's like a listen feature so that it can monitor if pages are changing so that you can limit it by?
I do not know if there's a listen module for PhantomJS or CasperJS. What I do know is you could likely write a server-side script that checks for changed page data, and if so, then it runs the CasperJS script. Does anybody else have any other questions? Mark?
See if I can word this right. So if I was in Chrome looking at Inspector in the console, I'd usually be able to do some sort of direct JavaScript referencing of the variables that are available in the page. Right? I mean, you got me? Are those variables, like, is there like a window dot?
Oh, definitely.
Like available here?
So I actually am in the process of writing another scraper for the Milwaukee County Transit System sales locations, for the ticket sales locations. They actually have ticket sales locations available on their website, and it's just a little injected JavaScript they run. Turns out CasperJS actually has a feature where you can execute JavaScript. So I will do execute JavaScript. You can actually do evaluate. Execute code as if you were using the browser console.
That's literally what I said.
So Casper.evaluate will allow you to analyze that information. So you can run JavaScript on the web pages you visit. Now, instead of having to do it, though, via opening up the page manually and entering in commands into the console, you can do it via an automated script.
So you just pull the AJAX off of that. If it returns data, as opposed to scraping it from the HTML, that is then. That's a detailed example, I'm sorry.
Yes, you could likely do that. So if you're able to do it in the console, you can do it in CasperJS. So does anybody else have any more questions? Again, this was meant to present a very rudimentary, basic aspect of how CasperJS works. If you want to see more detailed ones I've written, I'm currently working on a project with a few community advocates called the Milwaukee Data House. What we are doing is we are pulling in publicly available resources, such as the park system database, the police calls for service, and we're actually writing this data and making it available for developers to use. So this script actually, if I were to pull it, it would retrieve all the Milwaukee police calls for service. And I'll go over, because my example was very introductory, how this works. And so I have a few functions here to help me parse the data, but I start right away over on the Milwaukee Police website. I get my object ready, and then I call in CSS selectors, which pull the text from the table of calls. And then repeating pages, not function, will be, for every one of these, I get all of that information. And then I go click and go to the next page, so I can scrape all of the data from Milwaukee Police calls for service page with this script. 82 lines of code, and I automate this every half hour on the Milwaukee Data House server, and it gets written to a MySQL database. Not in this script, but there's a separate processor that does that.
I have a question. Do you have anything that detects changes to the source document that could break your scraper?
So generally what people do is they combine the CasperJS scripts with unit test for the results. So if a unit test fails for this CasperJS, then you have to look in there and be like, why is this failing? And it turns out that the source document changes and it breaks your scraper, your test will fail. And so you'll have to be notified to do that. So many people use a service like Jenkins or otherwise to make that happen. Question?
Can Casper, how do you deal with, say, like an automated thing like this if you get like a 400 or like a 404, like a 503, some sort of error on the page that can you handle that?
So PhantomJS, I believe, can handle these errors for you. You can get the HTTP code back, and then you can go from there.
Okay.
Richard.
Okay, so out of all the scripting tool that was out there, why do you choose this one? What's
So-
the major advantage?
There's one thing is that this is open source. So I'm a huge fan of the open source community, as I hope you guys are. CasperJS is all open source. CasperJS is community run. For example, there was a service a while back called, I believe it was I forgot the name of it, but it ended up being acquired. It was this web scraping service where you could click to create data sets from web pages. Kimono, yes. Kimono got acquired by Palantir Technologies, which is a secretive company that develops software for law enforcement, for a few $1 million. Actually, probably more than that. Palantir came forth and said, shutting it down Kimono, no more. Shut off the public's access. It's now an internal Palantir project for Palantir's use only. Those kinds of things happen in the community, especially with startups and the like. So open source, yes. Also, no web interface. I can control this from a command line. I love the command line. So import IO, you have to go on the website and set it up. Besides that too, CasperJS is free. So all you pay for are the server resources that you use. CasperJS is free and open source. So hence, I know it will be around for quite some time. It is a well-maintained project. And also, I can use it in the way I want to use it because it's a server program that can run via command line. Mark.
Thank you for mentioning server resources because that was my question. What's the lowest end you run? I mean, we talked like a $5 DigitalOcean box or like a $20.
The Milwaukee Data House is running on the $10 box from DigitalOcean. What I'm hoping to do is move to one of their other services, or not move to another service that is a little cheaper. They kind of, like on the managed support side, go down a little bit, but it is a little cheaper and would give me more server resources, but that's when the time comes.
So nothing terrible though.
Nothing terrible. It uses very little RAM, uses very little space. Most of my server activity is actually MySQL, the MySQL read and write. Any other questions?
Thanks for breaking my demo.
Yes, I will be honest with you, I kind of had an Eminem moment where I choked, but yes. If you guys want to get in touch with me, j.mp/Jesmok, my last name, quickly will take you to, well, I guess it doesn't now because of the Microsoft acquisition, but of course I don't know that at all. LinkedIn is the best way to get a hold of me. I know people from meetups usually add me on Facebook. I don't add people on Facebook unless I know them personally. So LinkedIn is the best way to get a hold of me. Otherwise, I have cards with my email address if you want one afterwards. Otherwise, it's just me@anthonyjesmok.com. And that's how to get in touch with me. So thank you all for being patient and accommodating this evening. And hope you have a good 4th of July holiday weekend.